Before we jump into today's show, I just wanted to let you know that I have got a brand new 3-part audio series available to download right now. If you head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio, that's all one word, no spaces, you can download your How to Build Your Authority with Podcasting audio series. This is going to address guesting and hosting. So if you're interested in either of those and you want to know how to build your authority, head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio. The link will be in the show notes. You're listening to the Mindset and Action Podcast, the place to be to grow and streamline your business. I'm your host, Donna Eade. Let's jump into the show. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm so glad to have you here today. And I have a guest with me today. His name is Oli Cook. Welcome to the podcast, Oli.
Hi, Donna. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I am excited for this conversation. Success without the side effects sounds amazing, although I think we're going to dive into a little bit of what those side effects might be, because I think that could be different for different people. But before we dive into all of that goodness, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a mindset and performance coach for driven entrepreneurs who want success without side effects, ultimately. So they are looking to scale and grow their business, but also their fulfillment. That's a value that they definitely have too. I'm the creator of the rapid root level shifts method, which is what I use to dissolve the subconscious fears, inner blocks, limitations to doing that scaling. And what I mean by scaling in the context that I use with my clients is kind of if you have perhaps full one-on-ones and you're looking to do more leveraged one-on-one offers or groups, digital products, or perhaps you're a solo entrepreneur working by yourself and you're looking to expand into having a small team, or you have a small team and you're looking to kind of grow that, but you're coming up against some kind of fears, perhaps limiting beliefs or mindset obstacles to that. I am a bit of a wanderer. In the last 10 years, I lived for a number of years in Vietnam. I'm from the UK. I've also been living in Mauritius for the last couple of years, but I'm in back right now, and my partner's South African. We've been together 7 years, and I intend to kind of move there soon. And the last thing I guess I'd say that's significant is I'm a former lifelong anxiety sufferer, panic attack sufferer, and I really get how painful it can be when you've got the external accomplishments, the external success, but it doesn't match how you feel internally. And so one of the things that I help my clients with is sort of optimizing the mindset, getting those messages down to the root as well, so that they sort of feel as successful as often other people think they look.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is something that a lot of us sort of suffer with. And we had a lady on the podcast a few weeks back, my friend Nicola Tonsaga, and we were talking about imposter syndrome. It was one of my live sessions that happened at my event. And yeah, that thing that you can see from the outside, oh, look at the success this person's got, yet internally they're suffering with this. Oh my gosh, I'm who am I to do this, and what are people thinking when they look at me doing this, and things like that. So I think that's a big topic that always comes up, and it's great to sort of see that you're coming from a place of having experienced this yourself, so you can really tap into what people are feeling. I think it's always the education side of coaching is really, really valuable, and I highly, I love a certificate. So I like it when people have done the work, but when you've actually had to do the work yourself and go through those steps yourself, you've got an added layer of just attention to detail that other people just can't have if you've never had anxiety. I have. If you've never had depression, if you've never been through those kind of things, it's very hard to put yourself into those shoes and understand the types of feelings that people can be feeling comes to their business, when it comes to their life and things like that. So really interesting to sort of have a little glimpse into your story there. And I have to touch on your South African connection there, because my very good friend Claire Prothero will be listening to this podcast at some point, and she is my friend from South Africa. She's my accountability buddy. We've been friends for over 4 years now. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what area of South Africa is your girlfriend from?
Yeah, she's from Cape Town.
Oh, lovely. That's where Claire is.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, so when you move over, let me know and I'll put you in touch and you can
Oh,
go out for a one-to-one.
yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, I'm
Like to make the
excited.
connections.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm really lucky that Claire often shares with me when she's out and about and we're having our one-to-ones. She will take me to places and show me. Like, I've seen Tabletop Mountain. I don't know that I'll ever get to see it in person, but I have seen it through a phone in real time. So that was quite cool.
Wow.
Okay, so on to the topic of the day. You're talking about success without side effects. And I think the first thing we have to do is talk about what those side effects can look like. So tell us, what kind of side effects do you mean when you're talking about doing it without them?
Yeah. So I guess the thing to probably like preface this with is that, of course, there are many different things that are really genuinely tough when it comes to like building a business and life, right? Life happens, and all the challenges that come there. The way I look at things is kind of as a way of thinking rather than what is true. So there are people much smarter than me who disagree about what true is. So I'm more interested in, what's useful for my own thinking, for my clients. And when I'm referring to side effects, it's like the pressure, stress, overworking, overthinking, even things like guilt, anxiety, fear, and the sort of never enoughness that can often be the felt experience as an entrepreneur. And those, what I'm looking to do is basically dial down the experience of those, understanding that essentially it's not so much the actual circumstances that we're in. They're going to keep presenting challenges, but if not everyone is experiencing it like me, so I'm experiencing it this way and that person's experiencing it that way, even though it's the same thing, they look a lot calmer or they look a lot more, how does that happen? And so then what I'm interested in doing is basically adjusting the inner dials so that the experience of those things are much more different, like more strategic, clear, calmer, so that that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about side effects. It's not that all of a sudden you don't do anything that doesn't feel amazing in your business, right? It's that even doing those really edgy and challenging things and unknown and things that perhaps bring up a lot of fear, it's actually just getting the nervous system to a place where it's much better able to do them, and often, actually changing the experience entirely, when it comes to how it's felt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing, is it's those dials, that imagery that you just gave there of dials is really sort of impactful to me as a visual person, which is so funny that I do a podcast when I'm a visual person, but we move. Those dials, it's not about them always being to the left in the happy place. It's being able to moderate them and understand them, I think, because we've always got to do in business things that we don't want to do, until we're at a point where we can outsource them or something. There's always going to be things that we don't want to do. So many people don't want to do their taxes, but it's a necessary evil of doing
Right.
business. So we've got to do it. So you're going to be going into that with some fear, some trepidation, some anxiety and things like that. But it's knowing that this is the situation, knowing why it's happening, and being able to change the view a little bit so that we're not not sitting in that high sort of cortisol level whilst we're doing it. So I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. We spoke just before we hit record, and I was talking about that culture of hustle, which just seems to be so prevalent in the entrepreneurial space, that people are like, oh, you've got to hustle, you've got to hustle, you've got to hustle. And then now we seem to be seeing a bit of a turn to that sort of hustle culture, but a lot of it's coming from these huge entrepreneurs that did all that hustling. And, you know, if you've been around in the entrepreneurial space for any length of time, you've likely seen it. You know, I've been around in the space for the last sort of 10 years or so. I've seen Amy Porterfield from episode 41 to episode 700 and whatever it was that she ended the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast before she changed it to her own show. I've seen the hustle that she went through. I've seen other entrepreneurs from near the beginning of their journeys and what they went through. And now they all seem to be talking about, you know, oh, you don't have to do it the way I did it. You know, I wish I'd have done this sooner. I wish I'd have gone to a 4-day week. I wish I had hired out sooner. I wish I had done this, and you can do it too. And I feel like they're not quite in the position to give us that advice because they didn't do it that way. And it's easy to say, oh, yeah, I can hire out now that you've got multi-millions of pounds. Not everybody has that situation. So what's your kind of thoughts on this turn of the hustle culture, of the, you know, the do it the easy way? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And there's kind of the two ends of the kind of like the extremes. And yeah, I think it's what I'm looking to do for my clients all the time is actually get accurate expectations. I think so much of what causes a lot of emotional turmoil and kind of mental is thinking, oh, things should be different to how they are based on how long I've been doing this and how long I've been doing that. And the expectations are kind of like haven't been adjusted. And so they're thinking, you know, I should be at my destination by now because someone told me it only takes 5 minutes to get there. Where in actual fact, I'm kind of going in and I'm like, well, actually it takes 30 minutes, you know, so you're right on track, you know, and what that can do immediately is be like, oh, okay, so I'm not behind. Actually, that's just like having more accurate expectations. So I think definitely that there is a place for really digging in and doing the things that really move things forward. And I also think there are sort of programs, kind of identities, if you like, that we perhaps have running at an unconscious level that then cause certain behaviors and actions to play out where we might not think they're ideal, right? So especially if you've come from like being an employee and then you're sort of shifting to more of an entrepreneurial mindset, there were certain things that got you to do really well as an employee that don't work so well as an entrepreneur, right? And so working really long hours on something might have impressed someone, or it might have, you know, got a lot of work done. But then if you're finding that as an entrepreneur, you're working so hard and long hours on something that you haven't realized that what you're doing doesn't actually make sense to be doing, then it can be sort of getting in the way. And that hustle is kind of like moving you forward in one direction, but without the questioning of it, does it actually make sense to be going in this direction? Is that towards where I want to end up? Or am I just moving forward for the sake of feeling like I'm taking action and being busy?
Yeah, that's so true. And I love that. I love that you said that people sort of seeing it as a 5-minute journey when actually it's a 30-minute journey. And I think that's something that has been really prevalent in a lot of the bigger entrepreneurs that sort of have the big budgets to do all the adverts and be in all the places. It's kind of the message you hear from them is buy my program, and in 10 weeks when you finished it you're going to have XYZ. And they're showing you all of these testimonials of people that have had, you know, 100,000 pound launches, or you know they've done a 10k month in their first month out, etc., etc. And it's like, and that's not it for everybody. And I think that it's not false advertising, because those people I'm sure did do what they say they've done, but it's the exception to the rule, not the rule, in my opinion. I think like the rule is somewhere much lower down in the success totem pole.
Mm.
And we're not getting to see that. So we go into that program thinking, great, at the end of this, I'm going to do a launch and I'm going to get what these amazing entrepreneurs have got. And then when we don't, we feel like we failed, and then we might give up, rather than realizing, like you said, that, you know, we were told it was going to be a 5-minute journey. And actually, no, for most people, it's a 30-minute journey, because you've got to take a few wrong turns before you get to the destination.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think often with that, then what I notice, my own mind doing at times and with my clients, it's like cherry picking certain things. It's like, well, I haven't got that bit and I haven't got that bit. And what I say to that, which is usually useful, is because I think often the comparison thing happens, and then what I realize is it's just taking one aspect and cherry picking that and being like, oh, but I don't have that bit that they've got. I really want that, and there's almost like fixating on that, like the launch where they made this much money or whatever, or they did it in this way. And I do a kind of thought experiment. So I'm like, you can't cherry pick one thing, because if you were to have that, you would have to trade off all of the other experiences. So in order to have the that particular launch that they had, you would also have to have their entire business, their family, their life experiences, their memories, and you would trade off yours. So you would lose all of your life experiences, you would lose all of your memories, all of your family, your business. Do you still want it? And I think sort of
Mm,
presenting it in that way, it makes it much harder to compare and much easier to
yeah.
see, okay, so I can't just cherry pick one bit. I have to have all or nothing. I think I choose nothing, and I'll just keep going on my own particular path.
Yes. Oh, that's a really good visual, actually. Yeah, that's so true. Wow. That's a powerful one. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's highlighted some things for me for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad it was
Might
useful.
be might be journaling on that a little bit later. So can we truly be successful without being on the brink of burnout sort of every 6 months? I feel like a lot of people talk about burnout, and I actually listened to something yesterday where they asked the person, what what is your opinion on burnout? And she said, burnout isn't failure, it's your body telling you that you need to readjust your priorities, which I really liked that kind of analogy of it. Like, it's not failure, it's your body telling you you need to reevaluate your priorities. And I think I can see the truth in that. And a lot of entrepreneurs go and go and go, and they're trying to be successful, and they do it to the detriment of their health. They do it to the detriment of their nutrition. They do it to the detriment of their family time. And they keep going until something gives and they have to stop. And then they feel like they're failure. And then they're like, oh, I can't do this. And they go through that whole conversation of like, why am I doing this? I should just go and get a job. This isn't working, blah, blah, blah. And then something will happen that makes them think, they'll remember that they're completely unemployable and nobody's going to hire them. So like, nope, I've got to make this work. And they get back on the train and they start again. So is there a way that we can kind of maybe lessen that, so that it's not getting to that full burnout stage where we're at the point of collapse, but we're actually sort of stepping towards that success in a more sustainable way?
Yeah, I love that question. And I work with a lot of like high achievers, driven entrepreneurs. So it's a very topical thing, it's something that comes up a lot. And one thing that tends to happen is without even really being consciously aware of it, outside of conscious awareness, usually once a particular thing has been achieved, the goalposts move, the horizon moves, but before, they've even realized. And so it's kind of like, well, that wasn't even registered as like the end point, or that there was no stopping there. It just continued. So I think one of the things that can make a big difference is and it might seem like little, but actually it's quite significant in terms of what it can cause for your experience, is how you actually define success. And if I think about how I would have defined success like 5 years ago, or how I think it's very common to define success. It's like, well, I want to have a lot of money, making a big impact, really doing good in the world. And they're all kind of quite external things. And
Mm.
what they sort of place it out there. They place it out there. So there's kind of like, this gap that needs to be filled, this chasing that happens. And you see it everywhere, right? It's so normal. I like to sort of flip things around a bit so that actually success and fulfillment is something that I believe you can be 100% in right now, and also more ambitious than you've ever been. So I think of it as high performance and high fulfillment, and adjusting the way you see success. I would define it personally, and it's just my personal frame, is a state of mind. And I know maybe that sounds a little bit like kind of corny, but it's, if you think about it, there are people who are incredibly successful, have achieved, ticked every single box that you can think of, and we'd ask them, do you feel successful? And it's like, not yet, right? It's like, oh, okay. So what is success then, if that's not it? Because I was thinking that was it. And so I think I like to ask the kind of harder questions, and really I see it as like, if you can basically cultivate a way of thinking that you are successful now today, why wouldn't you do that? Like, is there actually a downside to that? And some people might say, well, yeah, I need that hunger to keep going, right? If I never feel satisfied, then I know I'll keep going, right?
Yeah.
But I just don't agree with that. I think when you're feeling satisfied and fulfilled, plus you have big goals and ambitions, I think they work really well together. And when you feel satisfied by something, it makes you want to do it again. And so
Mm.
I think at the beginning of the day, you can even start to be sort of looking for, how am I already being successful today? What lets me know that? Oh, I've got this lunch with a friend at this time. I've got this meeting with these clients at, this time. And you can start training your mind to actually look for the ways in which you're already being successful. And of course, there's still plenty of room for, and I also would like to really achieve that thing and that thing. But today, how am I already being successful? Because that also helps to integrate the previous wins you've had and the previous milestones you've hit that often get ignored, right? And I think when those get ignored, they don't get integrated, and therefore that sort of again feeds that kind of cycle of like never enough. Because if it's never acknowledged, if it's never like made high definition until you see, look what you just achieved, right? Then why would the future examples and achievements be any different? So yeah, I think that's changing that like definition and how you actually see success, I think can already help to reshuffle those priorities, because then it's like, well, no, this is why I'm not going to be doing this today, because that really doesn't fit in with how I see success now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that, that's how I would have to answer that.
I I really love that. And I've got a couple of like images that came to me while you were talking there. And that was like the satisfaction and wanting more of that. That always happens when I have a bar of chocolate. I've never had a bar of chocolate and gone, do you know what? I'm good. I never need another bar of chocolate in my life. So, there's a good analogy for you.
Yep, yep.
And it also made me think of something that my friend Claire actually is always talking about, celebrating the small wins. And one of the things that I did recently was I hosted an event at the beginning of April to celebrate 5 years of this podcast. And it's because I never celebrate the wins. It's just not something that I've done. But what I've just realized as you were talking was, yes, I celebrated that win, but I did it with something that meant I had to do more. And I was in charge of this event. I organized it all. I did all of the work for it. And I couldn't be fully present with my guests on the day because I was the person who's organized. So I knew where everything was. I needed to go here, there, and everywhere. And I was kind of the key player at the front through the whole event. So I didn't get to be as present as I would have liked, that you would have maybe had if it was a party. I've been describing it to people as I was the bride and the wedding planner on the
Okay.
day. So everybody wanted to talk to me because it was my event, but I didn't have time to because I was organising it all and had to
Mm,
move around. So I kind of did myself a little bit of a disservice there in that respect of not being able to really sit in it and enjoy it and take that win. But also the process of organising an event. Now, my event financially made a loss, and I'm going to do an episode, or I might have done an episode by the time this one comes out, on sort of creating an in-person event and what that actually looks like financially and the benefits, pros and cons and things, because I think it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people talk about it. So I'm going to use myself as an example, but it made a loss. And that was kind of, I had the two focuses. I had the focus of, there was some really good conversations that happened in that room, and I know that people got value out of it, and people have told me that they really enjoyed it and they really found the room a really nice room to be in with the people that were there. So I know that there was a positive, but on the other side of it, I lost money.
mm,
And so I have those two things. So I can't even take the win of the fact that the room was really good and that people really enjoyed it and that everybody had a good time and I enjoyed it and that the afternoon tea was amazing, because there's this other thing where I feel like I failed because it didn't turn a profit. And it's like you can't even take the small wins because there's something to knock you down. So it's like I haven't really celebrated the fact that, my God, I did that.
mm.
I sort of sat there and
Yeah.
I organized it all. And, it doesn't matter that it made a loss because I learned so much doing it. Not that I'm ever planning on doing another in-person event again. I did say it was a one-off and I plan it to be a one-off, but I learned so much about me
Yeah.
through doing that. So there is wins to be taken, even when it looks like on paper that it was a loss. There are wins to be taken. And I think we often miss that because we are so focused on the external successes, like you said, and focusing on out there and comparing ourselves and looking at what other people are doing and going, well, I didn't do it as well as X. So I failed, and not taking that. So really interesting. And I found that fascinating. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and actually that, that example, I think it's really, I think a lot of people obviously will resonate so much with that, where they've kind of tried to celebrate and kind of celebrate those milestones, but something that perhaps didn't work out so well took the mental space. And I
Mm,
think that does make sense, because it's kind of, as you've been running your business for so long, that's kind of where the focus has been, the priority lens. And so yeah, I like how you said it was actually, you know, taking the time to do it, that really in itself is the celebration as you look back. It didn't necessarily need to feel that good in order for it to be a really big win, because it was something that previously hadn't come so naturally. And I think by doing it, don't necessarily expect it to feel good, especially the first few times, right? When people start,
mm,
well, especially if it's like with any other habit, with habits of thinking and habits of feeling, the mind will go down a particular neural pathway that's well trodden, like that
mm.
pathway in the forest. And so as soon as you start trying to go down a different one, for a little while it's likely to default to the main one. Plus
Yeah,
we have this bias towards negativity, which is just like kept our ancestors alive. So
yeah,
it's not a massive surprise when the mind is like, looking to the thing that it's associating with keeping us alive. Um,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I would love it if you could give us three sort of, and I feel like we've had quite a lot that we could take away already in today's episode, but three things that we could implement that could help us reduce or get rid of these side effects that we don't want to be experiencing.
yeah, and I think it does sort of really depend on what the side
Mm.
effect is. But I'll just give like a couple of examples with different ones, and
Yeah.
hopefully that will be useful if somebody's got that particular like quote unquote side effect. So I think so. Fear is one of the big things that I'm supporting, adjusting the dials for with my clients most often. And so if there's perhaps like a fear about the next thing that you're doing in your business, and It's got to a point where essentially the side effect is that you really want to do it. You have this strategy and you know how to perhaps like launch this thing or promote this thing, but for some reason you've been avoiding. And likely it's not all areas. It's just this one like particular thing that keeps getting
Mm.
moved from to-do list to to-do list. Um,
Yeah.
then what happens there is like the more it gets avoided, the more the unconscious mind learns that this thing is actually dangerous. And so if you think about like a Formula One driver who is, let's say, just on a practice day, they're just getting in the car and driving around, they're probably not feeling much fear, even though it's objectively a pretty dangerous thing that they're doing, driving at like 200 miles an hour around, dangerous corners. But because they've moved towards that and they've gone out of their way to do that so often, they've taught their unconscious mind this thing is not dangerous, even though it
Mm.
is, right? So it doesn't really matter if it is or it's not. And the the same goes when somebody is avoiding getting in a car again and again and again. They've taught their mind this thing is dangerous, and so then anytime it's even perhaps even thought about or referenced by someone, the nervous system will start to detect right the perceived threats, start to go into a fear response. And so what you can do is kind of almost move like one step ahead with your mind, so seeing yourself first actually doing perhaps the next step to whatever this task is. And so stay ahead in your mind, and then the actual real action you do can be kind of like one or two steps behind that. And so you just start moving forwards and you start showing your mind this thing isn't deadly, because ultimately that's all unconscious mind cares about. It's like if it's causing fear, it's because it thinks it's life threatening. And so by moving towards it, you teach your unconscious mind this thing is safe.
Mm.
And particularly if you go out of your way to move towards it, your mind doesn't learn that something is safe if there's a payoff to the risk. So what I mean by that is like if our ancestors saw this bee's nest in the tree and they knew there was honey there, but there was a saber-toothed tiger that they knew might be hanging around, it might still be worth the risk to go get the honey. But if there was no honey and a saber-toothed tiger, they wouldn't just go walk through that area,
Mm.
because obviously that's something that's dangerous. And so we can sometimes move through something, but even though it's really scary, but the mind still doesn't learn that this thing is safe because there was a payoff that we'd seen. So that can be something to note. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's what I guess I'd say for like one particular area of fear can be
Yeah.
useful to start doing. Sometimes it's a bit too much to even do personally, but that certainly can be a really useful thing. Something around overwhelm, which is another thing that I think shows up for a lot.
Yeah.
Often I have my clients, coming to me and they're like, yeah, I feel really overwhelmed. I've got this. Literally this morning on a coaching call, it was like 7 different things. It's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense why you've been feeling that way. Um, and what's going on there is it's basically like consciously he was aware of all 7 things, but unconscious mind, there was like an error code. And so it was like, don't know how to move forward. It's kind of
Mm.
like trying to sit down at this giant table of food and going, eat it in the first bite. And
Yeah.
and mine just goes, what? Do you know? How? And so making things specific, actionable for the mind, and possible also is helpful, right?
Mm.
Is the way to kind of move through that. Often I'll ask my clients, if one thing like sort of bubbled up to the surface like a cork in water, what would be at the top of this list of like priorities as you can see it now? And often something will have a slight edge, and then it's like, okay, so let's start there, and then making it like really specific, because then the mind knows what to do with that. It's like, okay, so I take one bite and I put the bite, in my mouth, and then I eat that, and then I have another bite, and then eventually I can get through the whole table of food.
Mm.
Um, if
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's that analogy, isn't it? The how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So it's literally that. And I think we need it's a good reminder for everybody, because it is one of those things like we feel like everything, and I've literally had this today. I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we were sort of saying how much we've got to do, and there just isn't enough time to do it, and like practical time to do something when we've got meetings coming up that are taking whole days out of our work time, and we've got an event coming up that's the deadline, that these other things have got to be done. And it's like, well, there's physically not the time to do that, plus do everything that we normally do on a day-to-day basis to get ready for this event. What do we do? And that overwhelm was right there. And so what did I do today? I did something that was for that event and pushed something else that was part of my normal day, because technically I could break that up and not have to do it. It's not ideal, but if it comes to it, something can be pushed. So it's finding those priorities
Mm.
and putting them in place and going, okay, so I don't have to think about all of the rest of this list right now. There's 7 things. Don't need to think about 6 of those. Let's just focus on that one thing and take that first step or have that first bite. So I really like that
Yeah.
reminder for us.
And sometimes we're just too close to it, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and sometimes as well, it's like we have this sense of, well, there's no way I can't do this thing. And then if somebody's kind of challenges you on it a little bit, it's like, really, you can't? There's nothing? Like it's that, or this whole thing has to fall down. It's like, okay, actually maybe I could adjust that, or maybe, so it's not always like, sometimes taking things too literally, like, and if it's too rigid, I think that's usually something to kind of question a little bit. Is there some thing that could be moved or reshuffled so that other things can fall into place? But yeah, I do think that often there are lots of things that can get done and make sense to get done. And so yeah, like you say, it's kind of like shuffling the priorities, which
Yeah.
is a skill in itself.
Absolutely. It's absolutely. Oh dear. Right. Okay. So that was a fantastic conversation. Tell people where they can find out more about you and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, which is Oli, Oli, Cook with an E at the end, coaching.com, or via my Instagram, which is olicook.coaching. And what I do is I take more kind of like responsibility actually for being the one that adjusts the dials in our sessions with my clients and causing those shifts to kind of click and make sense to the deeper levels of the mind, so that when change happens, it kind of feels natural. It's like, rather than trying to cut your own hair, I work with people who are like, no, I want someone else to cut my hair. And so it's more like that. I see it that way. And typically those are the fears in a kind of like sabotage, that often my clients know what to do. They know the strategy. They're not new to that. And
Mm,
they're like, yeah, I know what to do. For some reason with this thing, I just haven't been doing it. And I think there's some fear there. It feels like a little bit too big to handle. People don't usually use this word for my clients, but how I usually frame it to them is there's conflict. And so it might be either to do with the way to the goal, or the process. Some part about the process doesn't feel safe, or some part about of actually obtaining the goal, achieving that doesn't feel safe. And
mm,
so it's kind of looking at that, and often it will be like, yeah, logically I'm fine with it, yeah, I'm totally happy, good to go. And then it's sort of like, would that be totally okay, like, does it get green lights all the way down? It's like, actually
yeah.
no, not so much. This is why, I'd feel really guilty if this happened, or if I had that. So what I do is I get agreement from all levels of the mind, so that logically they're good with it, unconscious mind is good with it. And then when change happens like that, it can happen very quickly. Often clients will come to me, at the beginning of the session they feel this way, at the end of the session they feel very different. Sometimes it can take a couple of sessions, yeah, with fears, anxieties, guilt, overwhelm.
Mm.
So I have
It's all the
my,
process.
yeah, yeah. So I have my unstoppable 6-month journey experience, which is kind of for each level of scaling, where we do that and we kind of remove the obstacles, so they're back to basically the default, which
Mm,
for most of the people I meet with, high achievers, is like movement, action, you know.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I will have all of those linked, all of those avenues linked down below for you guys. So do check out the show notes or the blog post to connect with Oli. We're now going to move into the section of the podcast, which is more of a quick fire round. So we don't have to go too deep, although the first one, I do like to go a little bit deep, but the rest of them will be quick fire. So the first question is, what is the biggest mindset block that you've had to overcome in your business so far? Which I always love to ask to mindset people because it's always a really interesting answer.
Yeah. It's a hard pick, to be honest. There's been so many, but I would say so. Yeah, it's between two, but one of them, I was working as a teacher previously when I was living in Vietnam, and what I didn't realize when I started my business was there was like this kind of identity, these beliefs that I had from having done that work that were then there affecting my business. As I mentioned a little bit earlier with like the employee mindset, I think
Yeah.
that was a really big aha moment for me, realizing, oh, I'm defaulting to like working all the time and not resting at all. I'm seeing rest as this thing that like I have to earn it, like I did when I was doing that. I'm trying to give everything for free so that this is not sustainable. And trying to get everything perfect. I'm not trying to like when I was a teacher, trying not to make any mistakes, right? I'm now bringing that into this business where actually like mistakes, failures are the thing that propel me forward. They're the most useful thing. And so it was like, wow, this is like a 180 in thinking. And another thing around like messaging was with that kind of teacher employee mindset running, it was like, well, don't leave anyone behind in the class. The weakest student, make sure that they catch up. And then when it comes to like my messaging, it's like, well, make sure I speak to everyone, make sure no one feels left out. It's like, well, then I'm kind of speaking to no one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was also a humbling realization, as well as thinking that I was like good at writing, because that was things that I'd like studied. And then I was like, oh, copywriting, yeah, not so much. I think I've got a lot of work to do there, because I'm not getting the results from my copywriting. So obviously I've got some stuff to learn, and that was kind of like a hard pill to swallow, because I thought I
Yeah.
was good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an issue. I did creative writing at university and I was just like, yeah, I'm all right at writing, but yeah, copywriting, it's a completely different beast.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I feel you on that one. Moving into our quick fire round, what is the planning tip that you would give to people that helps you with your planning?
So when it comes to, I guess I'll give the example of like planning my week, planning my days,
Yeah.
let's say. I'm always looking to, and this comes back to the satisfaction thing that I mentioned earlier, I'm looking to hit the target with what I get done each day. And so only putting things on the to-do list that I know I can get done. I don't always achieve this, but essentially it's like hit the target, because I think what that does when you actually achieve everything, then you're like, oh, that felt really good. I want to do that again
Mm,
tomorrow. But when it's like, well, I've achieved like 2 out of 15, then it kind of can feel deflating.
yeah.
And so it's initially setting it up that way, but also adjusting expectations throughout the day. It's like, oh, this big thing happened. Now let me adjust. Because otherwise, what I found is when I get to the end of the day, I have the same expectations that I had at the beginning of the day, and I'm evaluating it through that lens, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't get enough done. It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't allow for this, and you didn't allow for that. So I always adjust my expectations throughout the day, so that by the time I get to the end of the day, I feel satisfied with what I did get done, and kind of almost just like owning it a little bit. Like, okay, but how is that okay ultimately?
That's such a good one, because that's exactly what happened to me this morning, actually, is that I was working on something. I had planned that I was going to edit a couple of podcasts, and from 9 until 1, I had a call with somebody. This issue of, things needing to be done by this deadline came up, so I had to do something for that. I had to update a website link. I had to create a social media post that needed to get done. I got locked out of LinkedIn Oh
Wow.
my goodness. Like it turned around and said, you've been using third-party browser extensions that we don't like. And I'm like, what? I'm not using anything. So I had all this go on and I got to 1 o'clock, which is obviously an hour before we're sitting down speaking. And I was like, I haven't edited one podcast. What on earth? What have I been doing for the last 4 hours? It was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And then I wrote it all down and I was like,
Ah.
oh. Oh, okay. That equates. That makes sense, because I was like, there are days when I sit here and I twiddle my thumbs and I really should be working and I'm scrolling on my phone and I'm WhatsApping the family and it's just one of those days where nothing really gets done. And I know it at the end of the day. I'm like, yeah, I spent a lot of time
Yeah.
procrastinating today, but today I was like, I've been doing. I've like not looked at my phone. This is weird. And then I wrote it down and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that's like such a good sort of practice to get into, and just noticing like, that's why, because so often I think it just
Mm,
goes unacknowledged, and then it becomes this thing that's just sort of like almost like festers in the mind. It's like,
yeah,
oh, and
exactly.
um yeah, that can then be a very unpleasant experience. So, and also energy then going, mental energy then going to thinking, oh, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. And that's also tiring. It's pulling kind of like resources away from what's possible to do now, and, or even like rest and doing things in the evening, perhaps that support the like longevity of working in your business. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. So, moving on to productivity, is there something that you do to help you in the day to stay on task? Is there anything that you can give to the audience that might give them a, oh, I've not tried that before.
What do I do? I think one thing that I really like to do, I don't think this is a particularly like new thing for most people, but I'll just like listen to like brown noise, which really helps me just like focus in on what I'm doing. And yeah, I don't know why that really helps me.
Okay, so for people who don't know, because I've heard of white noise, what's brown
Ah,
noise?
yeah. Oh, if you haven't listened to the two, they're a little bit different. Brown noise is kind of deeper. It's got like a deeper sound to it. I just find it a little bit clears away some of the mind stuff and just like keeps me really like focused on what I'm doing. And I'll usually, where it makes sense, I'll kind of block my time into like, doing the same type of tasks.
Yeah,
Because I think, the whole like switching between tasks can be really time consuming, as you kind of then get distracted and then go back to that. And yeah, so those couple of things, as well as just re-clarifying what are those things that really make sense today, like what do I want to get done. And yeah, I've definitely been on a whole journey with this over my business, and seeing it from like the perspective of strategically what are those things that make most sense to get done,
yeah,
rather than just like what's going to feel like I'm taking the most action, like rowing the hardest. So it's like no,
yeah.
no, but actually, and often what I found, unfortunately, is those things are the scariest things a lot of the time. And so
Mm.
it's also asking, what am I doing today that's actually like scary.
Yeah, yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense. So, what is the thing that you are doing at the moment that is working in terms of building your audience? I think that's sort of something people are struggling with right now. I think people have turned around and said to me, I've heard it a lot at the moment, that Instagram isn't performing the way it was, and people don't really know why they're not getting the engagement they once got. Facebook's all noisy, blah, 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 blah. So there's lots of things that go on that sort of knock us off our feet when it comes to building our audience. But what's one of the things that you're seeing success with when it comes to building your audience?
So I don't know like what sort of stage somebody is at, I'm sure all sorts of stages when they're
Mm,
listening. But one thing that I found, guest training in people's kind of like programs, I found as like a really useful way to actually get in front of it when it's a complementary thing to what you're offering as well. I
yeah,
think it can be a really mutually beneficial way to reach people who are like at that stage where they're kind of like ready for that type of work.
yeah,
And yeah, I've done kind of a number of those in the last few months, and I found that like the type of people who find me are actually like really, they're sort of really ready for this type of work. They're like, yeah, like what you're doing really resonated with me. This is where I'm at. And so I think that would probably be like my sort of number one, I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
right now.
really good one because I think I've just been doing some work recently on account-based marketing. And for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, it's basically looking for the clients that you want to work with and gearing all of your marketing towards just them, literally just them. So it's more used in sort of corporate. So if I wanted Coca-Cola to be my client, all of my marketing would be focused on how do I get Coca-Cola to buy my thing. So what is Coca-Cola's priorities? What do they want to see from the product that I'm selling? What are they going to want to know about it? What are they doing in their business at the moment that I can help with, that this product will help them with, and focusing it on that. And it's a lot more work, I think, in terms of the thinking around it because you're so hyper niched into it. However, the reward for a big client like that on your books versus, a smattering of little people would be a huge win for you. So I think in the same way, doing this, like creating a training or something, is a lot more hard work than it is to put a social media post out. However, you're going into a complementary group, like you said. I mean, the audience has to make sense of people that are much more likely to buy from you than random strangers on the internet that are going to find your Instagram account. So therefore it's more work. However, the reward is likely to be higher because of the type of people that you're reaching in there. And I think that's something that we often overlook. We see it as, oh, that's going to be too much work. But if the audience is right, it can have a much better return on your investment.
Right.
Really good.
Yeah, and it's also leveraged as well in ways that perhaps sometimes a social media post you just post it once and never repurpose it or something. It's if you make a training that would also work in other people's, it can also be leveraged in that sense. You make
Yeah.
it and then maybe you still have to deliver it, but at least you've kind of mapped it out. You've got some kind of like core
Yeah.
um, things that you're teaching.
That you can use it again. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Fantastic. Right, now we move on to my very, very quick fire round because I know that we are running over time. It's been a really good conversation. So,
Oh,
what is a
yes.
podcast that you're loving right now?
Yeah, this this one's actually like I'm like, oh, this is such a generic answer, but actually it's Diary of a CEO.
A lot of people say it, and I think
Yeah.
it's the one that gets people into podcasting. So I'm not bad about it.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, I've listened to, various different ones. It's just there've been like some kind of episodes around fear. I really find anything on the topic of fear interesting because of my personal journey with like anxiety and what I support my clients with. I'm always looking to be like, so how did they overcome this? And from what I understand, why did that work?
Mm,
And so I'm drawn to that sort of stuff. So I find it really fascinating.
yeah. What's the book that's made the biggest impact on your life so far?
I think it would be 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. I don't know if you've
Okay.
if you've
No,
read
I've not
that.
heard that one.
It's really flips some things on its head when it comes to like
Oh, is that like how long
how
most
long you
people
have.
live
Yeah,
for? Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
think somebody's
it's
mentioned
pretty
it before.
confronting
Yeah.
to hear it that way, but it's also the way that he sort of puts that to your advantage and the way that he frames it and the way that he gets you to kind of see that as actually as such a benefit is very different to what I think most people would guess before
Mm,
reading it. And so, he's essentially saying things like you'll miss out on most things, right? Be okay with that. What
yeah.
are the choices that give you meaning? Like, what are those choices? What are those things you're doing with your life that actually do give meaning? What matters? Focus on that because you will miss out on many things. And yeah, I just think it's a really interesting book. Yeah.
Fabulous. We'll have that linked on my bookshelf, guys, if you want to go and check it out. And then what's your go-to snack when you're in a hurry?
uh, so I'm kind of weird when it comes to like snacks. I really like fruit. So apples, I probably apple, but I also like dark chocolate, like 90%. So those two snacks. And actually anything salt and vinegar flavored is pretty good for me. Yeah, I
Okie dokie. And what is your ultimate me time thing to do?
long walks. Yeah, just walks where I either listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, or just nothing, and
Mm,
just kind of like more mindful walks. That's what I really like to do for myself.
Love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ollie. It's been a fantastic conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Don't forget to go and connect with Ollie on his website and on his Instagram. And we'll see you in another episode real soon. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.